So yes, we see that this wonderful agenda for the 21st century, this global agenda, is surrounding our country and coming through the International Council on Local Environmental Initiatives, which partnered with the Government of Canada to fund the UN directive programs through the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. And our little municipalities are caught in the midst of all of it. And at the same time, none of these organizations can really get in and affect our lives unless they get our municipalities to partner with their voluntary programs. Thank you for letting me know about that before I got further into this. So in 1994, the municipal primer was sent to our local governments. And on page 9 of that primer is a flowchart of how Agenda 21 is being implemented through Canadian municipalities. And it's great that they just left this blueprint out for us. And we see here that they have different means of implementation. And the first three boxes really gives us an idea of what they plan on doing and how they plan on doing it. So when we're looking at our local strategic plans and items that are on the agenda, I encourage everyone to keep an eye out for these kinds of action items, because if they are putting forward items that will change your consumption patterns, or according to them, promote sustainable human development, settlement areas, and integrate environment and development in decision making. I'm quite sure many of us are seeing these kinds of words in our strategic plans. And I'll just keep moving further down here. It says, protecting and promoting human health and combating poverty. So some of these things we can see that they say that they're doing this, but they're not actually protecting our health or combating poverty. In the last 30 years, things have gotten much worse for our health, our economic status, our environment even, and certainly our towns and our cities are doing much worse in every way. And we'll get into that. And just want to really focus in where it says means of implementation. We see there it says promoting education, public awareness and training, information for decision making, and the transfer of environmentally sound technology. So this is how they did it. They didn't come in with force. They came in with education. They promoted their message with good marketing and good slideshows and presentations. They trained people to give these presentations and to write these strategic plans. They went to our counselors and provided them with information for decision making. And over the last many years, we've been assuming that our government is functioning as it should, and we, in a sense, we're absent and we're not there to counter the presentations and the information that was given. So this has gone ahead basically without anyone standing up to stop it, to question it, and to counter it. So this is what we will share how we can do that tonight. And that is what we noticed here in Peterborough. And I knew that this was happening all across the country. I lived out in British Columbia for 10 years. And as soon as I got there, I noticed that they were doing their official plan, and that it was basically the United Nations Sustainable Development Agenda was written all over it. So I just didn't know how exactly it was happening until I learned about ICLEI and the UN directive programs. So now our job is to kick the International Council out of our local environmental initiatives. And I believe that that is something that we can do, and we can do it all across the country and save our communities. Again, the solution to globalism is localism. So if somebody would like to read the mission of KICLEI, I'd welcome that.
I can read it. The solution to globalism is localism. KICLEI aims to educate our communities and local governing bodies about UN directive programs, offering insights into their origins, objectives, supporting rationale, and disadvantages. We will provide clear recommendations and empower local councils to reconsider their voluntary participation in these programs.
Thank you. So this is our goal. The solution is truly a positive solution, providing truth and education in our communities and to our counselors. A lot of our counselors would really welcome this information all across the country. We're going to run into one or two in each council that is really pushing this agenda. And a lot of them are just going along with it because nobody is standing up and saying, where did this come from? What is the rationale? Look at the disadvantages. And did you know that this is coming from a global agenda and it's overtaking the needs of our community and the focus of our counselors and our staff that are supposed to be there to represent us and serve the public. And we will show them the easy way out, and we'll let them know that they have public support behind it. It's not letting me flip. There we go. So our means of implementation for KICLEI is exactly the same as theirs. This is how it was done, and this is how it will be undone. So we will provide education, public awareness, and training for everyone here and everyone that's interested all across the country. We will provide good information for decision-making to our councils. And we will focus, instead of on promoting environmentally sound technology, as they put it, we will focus on community health and energy security.
No, please, I have a question.
We will have
I think we're taking questions at the end.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm very sorry.
Thank you.
Thanks.
No problem. I'm happy you have a question.
Yeah.
I'm going to try and get through this so we have lots of time for questions. So, what are we going to do for education? How are we going to help Canadians focus on local solutions to this global agenda? And that is truly the first step, is getting Canadians to focus on their local agendas. And it's one thing to know that the government of Canada and the international communities are doing this and that and signing these treaties, and they're just going to keep on doing that until sorry, not until, they will continue to do that. This is an ancient battle, and there will always be a group of people in this world who are trying to take over the land and to...
Okay, can I please add my question now?
I'm sorry. Would you mute, please, and ask your question after? This is an interruption to the meeting.
I'm sorry, but I forget. I have short-term memory.
So what we're going to do is we've put together a KICLEI primer. So basically the information that I'm providing tonight is in a 6-page document in a KICLEI primer. So that's the first step for everyone here, to go to the website and have a look at the KICLEI primer and become familiar with UN directive programs, the origin of Agenda 21. I think we all already know this, right? So it's trying to put that in simple terms so that we can share that with a wider audience. And it's written in a way to not be divisive and full of rhetoric or anything like that. It's just designed to get to the point of how this global agenda is interfering with our local communities. And this whole movement truly is dedicated to the spirit of freedom, and that spirit that brought us all together over the last few years and inspires us to collaborate as we move forward into creating a better world for future generations. So education is the key, and the KICLEI primer is the start to that. I can flip. Go. And so the beginning of that is educating ourselves on how Agenda 21 is being implemented through Canadian municipalities. And we touched on that, on the history and the Federation of Canadian Municipalities and how they are looking at our communities in order to get the results that they are looking for. So here's Justin Trudeau speaking at the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, and you can see it says local action, national results. So they know in order to get the results that they're looking for, they need to implement it locally. So I think I've touched on that enough. So what is sustainable development? I know growing up, I always thought that this was a good thing. And I would say that the more I've learned about it and looked into the history of it, the term sustainable development was actually coined in the Brundtland Commission. And apparently it aims to target private property rights and steer future population growth towards certain settlement areas and away from the majority of Canada, territorially speaking. So it's truly not a very great concept in a free country like Canada. And it specifically says that the land should not be treated as a regular asset that is controlled by individuals. And I know growing up, I very much like to, I've always enjoyed my family properties and the work that we get to do and in building and in working our land. And the last thing we want is the government coming in and telling us what we can and cannot do with our land. And so this affects a lot of people all across the country, this concept. Is there any way we can move the writing off the screen?
Yeah, I haven't seen
Yeah,
it.
please, because it just looks like a pair of balls.
So I don't know who's doing that, but I think that they
John Packfield. I can see a name show up. Do you mind resharing your screen? And I'm
Yeah.
going to change a
Just
setting.
maybe disable the whiteboard.
Yeah.
there we go. All right.
Perfect. Thank you so
share.
much.
I want to make sure I share the right one. There we go. Oh, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to share it with sound because I do have a video to share that's going to come up here. Excellent. Thank you. So sustainable development, the whole reason why they're doing this supposedly is to save the environment from save, yeah, to preserve the environment, to preserve the resources for future generations. And they're saying that it's because climate change is catastrophic, and if we don't do anything about it, we are going to yeah, the world's going to end in a couple of years. So this is their argument, essentially, that they're saying that it's well established that climate change is increasing the frequency of extreme weather events, and that this will affect our natural environment, our health, our jobs, and our economy. This is the supporting rationale for one of the UN directive programs that we're going to talk about tonight. It goes on to say that Canada is committed to limiting the global temperature increase to below 2 degrees Celsius, and that local governments are essential for the successful implementation of the Paris Agreement. And that's really interesting when you think about it, because the Paris Agreement is essentially a treaty between the nations, right? The nations that signed on to that agreed, and a treaty is a treaty. It's actually a binding document. And they're saying here, and that treaty was signed by the federal government, okay? But they're saying here that local governments are essential to the successful implementation of the Paris Agreement. And ultimately, they can't do that unless they get the local governments to adopt these programs. And the amazing thing is those programs are completely voluntary. The local governments don't need to adopt these programs. If the federal government wants to sign a treaty like that, then they can certainly do that, but they can't force the implementation of it at the local level. And I think we should keep that in mind, even with the health treaties that are coming up between the nations. We might not be able to stop that, but we can certainly stop it at the local level, because it's the mayor that signs off on those health mandates as well. So as long as we're there and showing up locally, we have a good opportunity and chance to push back on all of this. Flip. There we go. So the Partners for Climate Protection Program. This is a program that is aiming to achieve net zero by 2050. Richard Gallant, could you please not do that on the screen?
Oh my God, that's perfect. That's perfect.
Could you please have him? Could you please have him leave? Because he's doing that intentionally. Thank you. I'm not surprised that people are intentionally trying to disrupt this meeting. This is the nature of our work. This is actually shows how important this work is, and the fact that they don't want people to know that this program is operating in 500 of our municipalities across the country, potentially more. So this is a map from the website for the Partners for Climate Protection Program, and it shows there our municipalities. And I'm sure everyone here has already checked out this webpage and checked to see if their municipality is partnered with this program. But this is a program that is aiming for net zero in our communities, and basically getting into our municipal plans with climate action, with action items that will affect the Canadian way of life. And they've been taking members ever since 1994. And here we go. This is their 5 milestone framework. And what's going on with all this purple? Reshare that. There we go. They have 5 milestones, and I think I'm actually going to leave this. I'm going to share a little bit more on this when I get to the video that's coming up here. But essentially, what I'd like people to get from this is that we need to educate ourselves on these programs, right? We need to know what the 5 milestones are. And I just don't want to be too repetitive because the video I'm going to share will get into this a little bit. But essentially what they're doing is once our municipality joins this program, you can see on the side there from Muskoka as an example, you can see at the top, they partner with KICLEI, right? They're partnered with KICLEI, and then it goes on to say that they've put this into their strategic plan, and therefore the Muskoka community will endorse, and affirm its commitment to reducing corporate and community greenhouse gas emissions by 50% by 2030 and to be net zero by 2050. So what does that mean? Reducing corporate and community greenhouse gas emissions by 50% by 2030 and net zero by 2050. If we look at this pie chart here, you see at the bottom there, that big chunk, that's our private vehicles. They want that to be cut in half by 2030 and almost 100% by 2050. They also have our off-road vehicles and our livestock and our residential and commercial and so on. So we can see here, what does it look like for 100% of our greenhouse gas emissions to be cut in half? Do you think that our lives will drastically have to change in order for that to take place?
Kill the
Absolutely.
polar bears.
There we go. So all right. So what are we going to do about this? Because this is going to be a problem, isn't it? And it's already affecting our lives. Well, we need to start preparing all across the country, just like we started doing here in Peterborough and having success. Community action plans. We need to lay out the board. What are we looking at? We can't do this just in one municipality or one county and save Canada. We need people to learn how to prepare and to move this forward all across the country, which is why I'm so excited to be speaking to BC Rising tonight. You're already doing town halls. You already have people looking at your agendas. And we want to show you how we've done this here. So first we lay out the board, and then we figure out what municipalities are partnered with this program alongside us, and we support each other across those municipal lines. We find the original resolutions to join these programs. They're 3-page documents. They're in the archive. It's a simple request to our clerks to get these resolutions. We find the resolution, we look at it, and we draft a resolution to reverse it. And so we can put that before our councils and have very clear recommendations on how to leave. And then we take that resolution to leave, which we've drafted, and we turn it into a statement of support so that we can gather signatures from the residents of that municipality and bring it with us and have it with us when we move forward in doing delegations and corresponding with our local councils. So we lay out the board. Here in Peterborough, we found that the city of Peterborough, the county of Peterborough, it's 8 townships and 2 First Nations. adopted the Greater Peterborough Community Sustainability Plan, which is administered by an NGO called Sustainable Peterborough, who is partnered with KICLEI and the Partners for Climate Protection Program. And then we start to gather some key information. Now that we know who is administrating this net zero program, we get a little Excel spreadsheet, and we put the names down on the left-hand side, however you like to lay out an Excel spreadsheet. And then you get their homepage, the contact for the mayor and council, a link to their calendar and their agenda, instructional page on how to speak to that council, because it's different in every municipality. And if they have it, a link to watch the meetings. And then you also would gather the address, email, and phone number for the town hall and the clerk. And then once you have that information, you would send a request to get the joining resolution for the Partners for Climate Protection Program, or the NGO, the resolution to partner with the NGO. Many of the NGOs that are doing this are called sustainable, with your city name after it. So that's something to look for. And you find those joining resolutions, and then you look for your contacts in those communities. If you're looking at a situation like this, if you're in a city like Ottawa, you find contacts in each ward. So there's 24 wards in Ottawa. So you want a team contact in each ward if you can get one. And that way you got a good little team to work with. And then you can take turns watching the agenda for the Sustainable Development Net Zero action items and prepare yourselves to speak. So that's laying out the board, that key information. It only takes maybe an hour, maybe 2 hours to find this information for your town. And then you find the resolution. So here's an example of our resolution in Peterborough. We see that it was approved by the city after developing a partnership with Sustainable Peterborough and KICLEI Canada. And when we look into Sustainable Peterborough in their strategic plan, it says that this organization is focused on implementing and tracking progress towards the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals in our community. And so they put the resolution right there. I didn't even have to look for it. They were so proud of this that they put it right on their webpage. So these words right here in December 14th, 2016, the adoption of the climate change greenhouse gas reduction targets. This is the motion that we want them to reconsider. In our councils, it's all about paper, paper and motions that they adopt, either by bylaw or resolution. These pieces of paper are actually really important. They're just words on paper that we're up against. And it's really, I say, the United Nations has a very fragile grip on this country. They're simple motions that can be brought forward to be reconsidered. So once we find the motion, we know what it says. We draft our motion to reverse it. So this is our motion that we're going to bring forward. And it states that the Council of the City of Peterborough reconsider the report to adopt the climate change reduction targets and reconsider its participation in the Partners for Climate Protection Program, and communicate to FCM and KICLEI Canada the cancellation of its membership in the PCP program. It doesn't sound that exciting, does it? It doesn't look that exciting. All we're asking them is to reconsider. We're not saying burn it down. We're not saying anything extreme. We're just saying we'd like you to reconsider this. And that's how things get done in councils. So we take our recommendations and we turn that into a statement of support. And we turn it into a council resolution to leave the FCM-ICLEI Partners for Climate Protection Program. And we start gathering signatures on that to show that the community and members of our community support these recommendations. And that way, when we do our delegations, we're not just doing it because we think that. We're doing that because 100, 1,000 people want to see the council leave the Partners for Climate Protection Program. And then we also will fill our council chambers and send in as many delegates as we can to speak professionally on these items. So this is all in the preparation before, well, I'm not going to say before. You can, of course, do delegations without all of this, but I would recommend at the very least to have the resolution and have your recommendations clear. Because ideally, we want to move on to public awareness, because that was a means of implementation. So it has to be one of our means of implementation as well. And so community awareness, we want to get out to our community with our statement of support and start talking about these issues. So attending events and doing community service as well, holding town halls as you're already doing. And as we're gathering signatures on our statement of support, I highly recommend we also get their email addresses from our community and have them sign up to be on your local newsletter so that they can get notices of when delegations are taking place, when important things are on the agenda, and to get more involved at the municipal level, and so on. So there's a lot that we can do with that. And I will say, when it comes to community service, how important it is that we are taking part in community service, especially when it comes to showing that we do care about our environment and that our groups should be out there on Earth Day, doing initiatives, cleaning up, and including that in our community action plan as well. It's important to show that we are not against environmental work, and we as Canadians clearly love our environment, and that is not what we are against. So part of our public awareness, we've done a 5-minute video, and I can share that with everyone tonight. And this is something that can be shown in town halls to educate people on this program. So people could simply even have people over to their home or invite them to a town hall, share this video and gather signatures, and let people know about upcoming items on the agenda that you will have people going in to speak to. And get as many people engaged as possible. So with that, I'm going to share with you this video on the Partners for Climate Protection Program and FCM programs. And it's truly designed to in a way that we're dropping any rhetoric and really approaching it from a localism over globalism perspective. And I think that is the best pathway forward, just to calm everyone down, because we're up against the United Nations who says that we have 2 years left to save the world, and they're creating so much panic and anxiety in the younger generation. And we want to be the ones who are level-headed and calm and restoring hope and optimism to our communities. And I think that we can do that because the facts are on our side when it comes to the climate change narrative. And with a few simple facts that we can bring forward on that, we can restore a sense of common sense in our communities and get people back on the same page. So I'm going to share this video and we'll go from there.
Fellow Canadians, esteemed members of Canadian Municipal and First Nations Councils, let's champion local needs over global policies and prioritize the preservation of our natural environment while securing prosperity for future generations. Have you heard of the Partners for Climate Protection program? This initiative, deeply rooted in sustainable development, guides local communities in combating climate change. We urge you to consider our recommendations and join us in spreading this message nationwide. Together, let's pave the way for a sustainable and prosperous future for all. Since the 1992 United Nations Conference on Environment and Development in Rio de Janeiro, Canada has aligned itself with global efforts, guided by organizations such as KICLEI, the International Council on Local and Environmental Initiatives, and emphasizing the role of local strategic action in advancing sustainable development. Sustainable development, as defined in the Brundtland Commission, encompasses the preservation of natural resources for future generations, asserting that individuals cannot control the land. In alignment with this principle, Canada has endorsed the Paris Agreement, committing to limit global temperature increases to below 2 degrees Celsius through the implementation of net zero policies. This commitment is founded in the theory that climate change is predominantly driven by human activities and that extreme weather events pose a growing threat to our environment, jobs, and economy. As evidenced by data from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, while recognizing the limitations of climate models, empirical data indicates a decline in fatalities from extreme weather events over the past century. Additionally, natural climate cycles influenced by Earth's orbit and tilt play a significant role in shaping our climate. It's crucial to understand that CO2 is not a pollutant. Rather, it serves as an essential building block for all life on Earth. Additional CO2 in the atmosphere fosters the growth of global plant biomass and enhances crop yields worldwide. Moreover, CO2 constitutes only 0.04% of the Earth's atmosphere, with human activities potentially contributing just 5% of this total. Canada stands as a natural carbon sink, boasting 60% forest cover and representing only 0.5% of the world's population. Despite the energy demands associated with life in a vast, cold country, Canadians contribute a mere 1.6% of man-made emissions. The FCM-KICLEI Partners for Climate Protection program is an initiative aimed at achieving net zero CO2 emissions by 2050, facilitated through KICLEI software. This process entails collecting baseline data, establishing reduction targets, devising action plans, and annually monitoring and reporting progress. While free to participate, it requires council and staff involvement, as well as public funds and assets for implementation. Local governance best balances scientific evidence and economic realities, ensuring policies reflect community needs. However, it's important to acknowledge that UN directive programs may prioritize global policies over grassroots perspectives. Without careful crafting, sustainable development policies could potentially encroach upon the Canadian way of life. This includes impacting aspects such as private car ownership, individual travel choices, property ownership, single-family homes, and the growth of small towns and privately owned farms. We urge Canadian Municipal and First Nations councils to seriously consider these concerns. As local leaders, you possess the power to shape the future of your communities, and it's crucial to ensure that policies are both effective and respectful of local values and lifestyles. Over the past decades, public funds have been redirected towards private interests, leading to the decline of small towns and exacerbating the urban crises. Meaningful public consultation is vital, yet staff often prioritize consultation with KICLEI-affiliated programs and online surveys which may misrepresent community preferences, leading councils to adopt agendas that don't reflect public sentiment. Opposing voices on net zero initiatives are often sidelined, pressuring councils to align with UN directives. Councils must prioritize unbiased engagement to serve their communities effectively. Participation in programs like the FCM KICLEI Partners for Climate Protection is voluntary, providing councils the freedom to withdraw. As local governing bodies, councils have a duty to represent public interests, safeguard land and water, and resist undue influence. We trust our councils to make informed decisions and recommend they carefully reconsider participation in FCM KICLEI programs. By exercising their power of choice, councils can ensure decisions align with local needs and values, shaping a brighter future for our communities. For more information, check out KICLEI on Substack. Fellow Canadians, esteemed members of Canadian municipal and
So that is something that we can share in our communities, and we'll be making more public awareness videos. And for anyone out there with the skills to make videos like this and take this information and gear it to your communities, I highly encourage public awareness, as much public awareness as we can put out on this information. So really looking forward to seeing what BC Rising puts forward and the great citizens of British Columbia with this information. So with that, KICLEI, we want to encourage and provide training on how we can better engage in our civic responsibilities. So watching the council agenda, going to our councils, even just showing up makes a huge difference. And providing delegation templates and on different items. For instance, we put out recently one on the climate change action plans, as well as the Federation of Canadian Municipalities and our involvement with that organization, and declarations of climate emergency is happening in many municipalities across the country. So we have one for that, and the official plan as well. Pretty much all across Canada, the same things are happening. So we can take these templates and go from there. We're also getting better at doing reports to our councils, so we can follow up really in a professional way with them. And I'd like to encourage people to get the book by Mary Baker, Citizen Ninja. It's an excellent book and provides information on how we can influence our policymakers at the local level and higher up as well. And really, they've done great work in the United States with Tom DeWeese, and AmericanPolicy.org is a great resource, as well as KICLEI training manuals that will be coming out. So with KICLEI, we're very much encouraging local councils on local issues. This really will legitimize our delegations and pull all of that public support into a very powerful local force to oppose the global agenda. So basically here in Peterborough, we have created a local council made up of citizens dedicated to ensuring sustainable development policies do not deliberately or inadvertently disrupt or restrict our cherished Canadian way of life. And this is basically taking Sustainable Peterborough's mission and reversing it. So everything we see that they are doing, we look at that as an example, and we can reverse it or do the opposite, create the opposite. If they have a local NGO pushing this, made up of a network of citizens in our community, then we want to make sure that we're pulling together our network of citizens that oppose this into an official local council on local issues. essentially opposing the International Council on Local Issues. And then we are officially ready to do super effective delegations. And the delegations are such a exciting
First of all, we
piece to
have
this.
delegations on.
I'm gonna not say that. That's the recent one from Peterborough. And so I'm going to get into delegations. And what time are we at now? Close to the end. But basically with our delegations, you know, we introduce ourselves. Hello, we've been missing for a while. The people have not been showing up to the councils, but here we are. We point out the items on their agenda that are aiming for net zero, and we note the fact that they've partnered with this program and include that in our package to them ahead of time so that they know exactly the motion that we're speaking of. Because some of the councillors do not know that they're even participating in these programs. Maybe not so much in the cities, I'm sure that they do know there, but in a lot of the rural small towns, they don't know that this is something that's happening and that they're actually implementing the United Nations goals in their community. And we point out what the supporting rationale is for the program. And rationally bring forward climate realism and just bring them back to what we all learned back in grade 2 about photosynthesis, and that carbon dioxide is not a pollutant and it makes up a very small percentage of our atmosphere, and humans are responsible for a small percentage of that, and Canada is representative of even a smaller percentage of that. So we already essentially are net zero, especially considering our 60% forest cover. And we provide information for decision making to them. And we talk about how public consultation seems to be operating in our towns and how our surveys are essentially providing us options to pick our top 3 sustainable development goals, and how the key stakeholders in the planning process for our municipal plan seem to be local NGOs that are partnered with KICLEI, and that in some cases delegations are being denied because the cities now consider their decision-making under the United Nations directives, because Prime Minister Trudeau is aiming to achieve Agenda 2030. And so we're letting them know how these plans are affecting our public consultation. And then we also let them know how it's affecting their decision-making options, and that it's costing time and resources and public funds and assets, and essentially the Canadian way of life. And we let them know, we're basically throwing the book at them at this point. We let them know that the Government of Canada and the Federation of Canadian Municipalities accepts no responsibility for these programs. This is at the fine print at the bottom of every page on the Partners for Climate Protection program, and that the Government of Canada and FCM accepts no responsibility for the implementation and endorsement of this program. And we let them know straight from the joining resolution of the program that this program is completely voluntary and our municipalities can leave these programs at any time.
Maggie, I wonder if this would be a good time to, I know there's so much you've got, and we might have to have you for another session, but we've got people that have been very patient. I know they've got hands up and they really want answers to questions. Are you okay with taking a few right now?
Yeah. Yeah,
okay.
I'm just pretty much there. This is a very important point in our delegations. We don't want to go in there and do delegations without providing the recommendations and letting them know that we have public support for these recommendations, and that and we show them the difference between their public consultation process and the feedback that we are able to gather behind us. So there you go. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing.